welcome back to Sync Riff Season 2. My name is Charles from Blue Buddha Entertainment. Joining me, my co-host, indie blues rock artist, Chase Walker. So stoked to be here, back with you all. Morning, Chase. How's it going?
Morning, Charles. Glad to be back. How's it going?
Going good. Been a busy first quarter. We had the NAMM session. We had Guild of Music Supervisors. Back at it for Season 2. And thanks to everybody for your support. Took a little hiatus because we also last fall launched our Sync Like a Pro Academy, which we'll talk about, but lots to unpack since we've been away. And one of the big hot topics is what's everything that's happening with TikTok, and namely since Universal Music has pulled their artists from the platform, want to thread that needle in how it might impact independent artists. And was listening to our good bud Ari's podcast, Ari Hershtan, and he was interviewing a guest. And I don't know if you heard this, Chase, but he was talking about an indie artist that did a collab with a major artist that was on Universal. So subsequently, that independent artist woke up one day and found out all his tracks from TikTok got pulled.
Right.
Yeah. So, we can talk about the moral of the story there is if you do collabs with co-writers, and if they happen to be on a major and something like this happens, it's unprecedented with Universal pulling all the cuts from TikTok. So this artist, who his livelihood was TikTok, promoting his music, royalty streams, and getting it out there, and now because he has a co-write with Universal, it's full stop. So we could spend some time, Chase. We work with a lot of independent artists, and we're diligent when we're working with co-writers and really breaking things down on the split sheets. But if we want to thread that needle, Chase, why is it so important to really, so for example, if you did a collab with a co-writer, and if you don't ask the right questions, you don't know they're administered by a major. What are some of those pitfalls?
Well, when it comes down to it, like with the example of TikTok, micro syncs, as they've been deemed recently, in the realm of TikTok, putting music on videos on TikTok is still a form of sync licensing under the eyes of the US government, right? So even though it's not at a major commercial scale, it's still synchronizing your piece of intellectual property, being the music, to someone else's intellectual property, being the video format, right? With that, what we're seeing, as you mentioned, Ari talked about on his podcast, is artists who are co-writers, collaborators with songwriters and artists on Universal Music's catalog who have nothing to do with Universal Music. They just wrote a song with someone who's on their catalog, are now getting their music taken down because that co-writer's percentage of their song is also part of Universal Music's catalog. Because when they sign, if Universal Music Publishing signs a writer to their catalog, their roster, they're typically signing that artist or writer's entire portfolio, including anything they've ever written before, or anything they've ever written with anyone else. Their percentage of that. They're now administering that. They're now representing the rights on that behalf. And so if they feel like it, they can pull those rights from wherever they please. They could likewise pull those same rights from Spotify or Amazon Music or Apple Music or YouTube. Mm-hmm. So it's something to keep in mind for sure when you're collaborating. What deals are your collaborators tied into, and is there any way that you could make the project that you're working on with them not tied into that other deal that they're a part of, if it's not relating to that. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And, and a key point there, Chase, to underscore, and something that in past IG lives that I've hopped on talking with indie artists, what the line gets blurred, which folks don't quite understand, and it's good to spend some time to underscore it, is, so for example, if Chase and I co-wrote a tune, Chase is administered by a third-party administrator, and if we're 50-50 on the writer and the publishing, and then we work with the sync agent, that sync agent can only control 50% of the indie artist. So if Chase is through admin through, let's say, Concord Music, Concord administers and approves Chase's share. So if we don't know that, and if a sync agent pitches that and we try and clear 100% of the writer and the publishing share, that's going to blow up in our face. The music supervisor is going to pose questions and say, what happened here? So that underscore the key point is, if you have a collab and it's a co-writer with, and they have a major publisher or an administrator, let the sync agent know, and we vet everything. We'll look it up on BMI and ASCAP to confirm that the information is correct. So that's a key point. And, there are benefits to collabing with a co-writer that has a major publisher, because if you want to touch on that, Chase, why collab with someone who's with, say, Sony Publishing?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, having your song being represented as part of, say, Sony Publishing's catalog, it is heavily beneficial because it opens up more opportunities for your material, in terms of not only being pitched for sync placement via their catalog potentially as well, but also getting your songs pitched to their roster of artists. They're for the better part of a century, that's how songwriters in Nashville have made livings. They co-write. It's not just songs that writers in Nashville just write themselves in a room and then go pitch to artists. It's collaborative rooms of writers every day making hundreds of new songs, and of that pool of songs get picked for different exploitations.
Yes, it's, a huge point there is also the scale and the level of that skill set is, if you do get a publishing deal, that major publisher is going to try and match make you with another writer who, in a good example, because in 2012, when I was consulting with a buddy of mine who started a sync arm of Pulse Music Group, one of the big key marquee writers for Pulse was Bonnie McKee, and she wrote all the cuts for Katy Perry. So again, something that we've talked about with indie artists is, if you're trying to, say, hopscotch your career and collab with a producer, look at the charts, look at who is getting the Grammys, who are the, who's that enclave of writers and producers. Because if you get a collab with them, and then the next thing you know, they're nominated for a Grammy and you wrote part of a cut, then your career is going to be fast tracked.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. This is a career not about what you know, but about who you know. Right. And I've seen it firsthand in Nashville, particularly people who have, subjectively speaking, I guess, but in some form it was objective, have far less skill at the craft that they're pursuing, right? Whether that's songwriting or singing or playing an instrument, right? But because they got those connections figured out, they're collaborating with the right people, those doors are opening for them. And you'd be surprised at how far some people get without really knowing how to write a single line. You know,
Yeah, time and place. And I'm trying to recall the name of, remember, because a couple weeks back we were at the Guild of Music Supervisors, and I'll pull it up. But the band, it was Frankie Pine had Music Soup. What is it? Daisy
Jones and the Six. Yeah.
Yeah, and the band couldn't be there to accept they won the award for the track.
Right.
And I think it was their mom that accepted it.
Yeah, I think so.
And she told the great story of, it was just about time and place of Frankie finding that track, and she synced it up. And that's a great, a segue of talking about, music supervision and what we do as sync agents, and the lane of cover tunes. And, why do a cover tune? But one wrinkle, we got a brief today that was needing a cover of a Frank Sinatra tune, but it needed to be dark and gritty and melancholy, and flipping it, make it your own. But so the point I wanted to share is what often gets misunderstood is, if you're an indie artist, and so for example, if Chase covers James Brown, This Is a Man's World, do you want to talk, Chase, about, so if you record that cover tune, how are you gonna, the metadata when you give me that cover tune, how are you gonna label that metadata so I know it's a cover?
Right. So obviously, you want to, in both your metadata and your email that you send either to a supervisor or to a sync agent, you want to make sure it's very clearly known that it's a cover. You don't want there to be any ambiguity to that, because even if you think that this is a very, very widely known song, everyone knows that this is a cover, someone might look at that and think, oh yeah, I've heard of a song called It's a Man's World, but maybe this is their own version of that. Why? Because covers are not, or titles to songs are not copyrightable, right? Yeah. You can write a song called It's a Man's World, and it could be your own song. That being the case, you want to make sure you, to the best of your ability, track down who the rights to the publishing belong to, right? Because there's two sides to the copyright of your material that you're pitching. You have the publishing side, which is the song, the composition of the song itself, and you have the master side, which is the recording of that composition. And so what you're pitching essentially is the recording of someone else's composition, right? And so, to the best of your knowledge and ability, you need to figure out who those rights belong to, and if you can, list that as well in there. It just makes everyone's job much easier.
Yeah, 100%. And to underscore, like you said, it's as a sync agent, with the new version of the cover, Blue Buddha would represent that master recording of Chase's cover of the James Brown cut. And then the music supervisor, they're going to contact and clear the other side, the composition, the writer, and the publishing share. And like you said, if you put in their information, and that's what also could be tricky, because sometimes those rights, so if it was an original set of writers, but those writers passed away, then do the rights go to that estate? Did someone acquire those rights on the publishing? So that's, those finer details we leave to the music supervisor, but anything we can help them with that information is a bonus. But so, to be clear, something we've been doing on our IG feed now is every Tuesday we share a sync tip, this type of information, and we link it through something we've been doing for 4 months now. Is we have a collaboration of songwriters and producers in our Patreon group. And every month we're writing to certain themes that in turn, Blue Buddha, we can pitch and want to thread that needle of a current trend, Chase, that you can speak to, having, been in Nashville for a minute and a Belmont alum. But let's talk about, Teddy Swims and what's happening. The Grammys happened, and what's happening on the charts with country and Americana and the Nashville scene.
Yeah, it's a very different world of music that we're living in than when I lived in Nashville. That's for sure. Beyonce is coming out with a country record. I'm sure most people have heard about that. And it sounds like there's kind of a host of other Billboard chart topping artists, pop artists, that are now venturing into the country scene, which is very interesting. To me, just from my first person experience, having been in Nashville, what historically unprecedented event seems to be occurring right now is that unlike any other time in American music history, the music scenes of Los Angeles and New York are now trying to be more like Nashville than Nashville is trying to be like them. If you look at Nashville at every other time in music history, it's been trying to be Los Angeles or New York. If you look at Patsy Cline records, if you look at, Florida Georgia Line records, you know what I mean? Like, they've always been doing the same thing. Now it's kind of like the roles have reversed a little bit. So it's very interesting. I think, and this is just my personal opinion, part of what is going into that is the fact that Nashville, for the first time with this traditional country revolution that's going on with like the Tyler Childers and the Chris Stapletons and the Brent Cobbs and those kind of artists that are really gaining a very mainstream audience in Nashville. Nashville, for the first time, is really leaning into being itself, and that's caught the attention of the rest of the world. Now they're like, oh, that country music thing's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Instead of country music trying to be pop, now pop's trying to be country music.
Yes. Spot on. Because, just looking at, mind you, this is the, what I pulled up here, Billboard Hot 100. And like you said, we've got, so Teddy Swims at number 2 here, Beyonce, Texas Hold'em. And, of course, Luke Combs is on here. He, it's a fast car, did the duet with Tracy Chapman at the Grammys, and just a classic track from back in the day, and then him collabing with Tracy on there. Now, before I go further, and do we know with Beyonce, Texas Hold'em, is there a sample? Is she paying homage to a particular track there?
I haven't dug that deep into it. Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be pulling from something. It does strike me, though, I guess, what areas they chose to use influence from country in, and what areas they didn't. You know what I mean?
Good point. And it was interesting because I think it was trending up in the feed. Her track still did pretty well on the country charts, but some radio stations weren't playing the cut. But despite that, she made some inroads. But so Teddy Swims, Lose Control. great track. I know, a couple weeks back I did a sync analysis that was used in a episode of Love is Blind, but it's just interesting looking at the top 100. You got your Doja Cat, Kanye West, Taylor Swift, all that, which is no surprises there. And then you got your mix of your hip hop, SZA, 21 Savage, the Red Rum track sampling a Brazilian cut there, and Miley Cyrus. But if you had your crystal ball, I would imagine for the rest, going to quarters 2 and 3, rest of the year, more amazing music coming out of the Nashville scene.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I mean, it seems like Nashville's just getting started on this front. Yeah, it seems like it's really going in a heavily it seems like mainstream music is going to get divided between music for the clubs and music for sitting and listening to. And the music that's for sitting and listening to is going to have a little more substance to it, naturally speaking.
Because you bring up a great point there, Chase, because what's going to be interesting, and I'll make a couple points and then we'll play some tracks from some of our indie artists, and we'll thread the needle on the sync lane, taking a little different approach from last season. But, at the end of the month, going to have a chat with an artist manager who, back in her heyday in the 90s, she was head of music at Atlantic Records. But she and I were having a chat the other day about the importance for indie artists to build your email list and connect direct with your fans, because hey, if TikTok, IG, YouTube all go away tomorrow, what are you gonna do? You can have 16,000 followers on IG, but if you haven't been cataloging and having an email blast over the years, that's a scary proposition, and you got to start over. But Chase, something that we can thread the needle is, and I'm going to play a cut. This is a new single from Katie Cole, and the track's produced by Howard Willing, who produced Sheryl Crow and OK Go back in the 90s, also Smashing Pumpkins. But yeah, I'll play a couple minutes about the track, and Katie just released a single last week, and we could talk about it on the other side. She's in Nashville, so let's see what she's got going. So this is Believe by Katie Cole.
Tell me a story of saints and of sinners, weaving words like deadly find, spare no beginners, fixated and frozen, and not without reason, looking blindly at the sun. You're nothing I'm needing. You tell me you work in the hours of hell, caught up in traffic at 10 p.m. Well, I'm in this too deep and I want all of you. That means your lies will not become true, and I'll believe what you want me to, 'cause I love you.
Cool. So yeah, that came out 4 days ago. But the hook, because I love you. So obviously a love tune. So immediately what's coming to my mind, Love is Blind. You could pitch this for a myriad of scenes with a love interest approach that's happening. And Katie, with her lyrics there, speaking in general terms, something we talk about in the past, Chase, is, not being too specific. If you're naming, I love walking down the beach with you in PCA Malibu, then boom, it's too specific for a scene. You're limited to what has to happen on screen. But yeah, great tune. Anything that on the instrumentation side, I know Katie's always played Yamaha guitars in the past, but anything that caught your ear there?
Man, shout out to Katie Cole on this one, because that's just all around really rocking my boat. I really love especially how she's using the pentatonic scale in the melody on this. It makes it all feel so very bluesy on top of the country aspect of it, which is just something I really love. It reminds me a lot of this artist called JJ Gray. You can find his stuff on Spotify if y'all are interested, but it's very much in this sort of bluesy country, almost has a swampy kind of vibe to it.
Yes. And it's got that timeless, me being a radio guy from back in the days, but I feel, radio, no doubt that could be a radio cut. Her harmonies there, and then the production obviously with Howard Willing. But yeah, we'll post the links to this Spotify playlist. So that cut came out 4 days ago, and another cut going from the States to Scandinavia abroad. But Flora Cash, shout out to Flora Cash. They have a new cut called Dragon, and we'll play this cut and talk about it on the other side.
Down there deep in the darkness, I know you're awake. And it took about as much strength as I had to fake. And somewhere out there, there's someone who knows how I feel. Lost in illusions and bound to the things that seem real. Feel like a dragon that's blown out the flame from his heart. Burned as he fell, what was left of the life that he tried. Down here, darkness, like still rain unfaded. Some call it out, but most are content or sedated. Things don't look so bad at times if you're drunk or you're stoned. I feel like I'm wasting my time and through. Feel like an angel has come out from hell to believe. Someone that's blinded to truth that I finally see. Hope that you're there when I close my eyes. I need you so.
All right, man. I could have let that keep playing out, but shout out to Cole Randall and Stressa, who that's a new cut, and we're back working with them. We have their back catalog through ICEA and their indie release, but then they still have their publishing with Sony. But something that was so cool that they did is they sync that track to a visual of Brandon Lee acting in The Crow, and Cole's, his haunting vocals, the production there, but the minimalism, and then you hear the drums kicking in, and the feels there, though. What were you picking up from that track, Chase?
Man, I mean, those harmonies are just to die for. You know what I mean? One thing to pay attention to, I think, for any of the songwriters and artists listening to the podcast out there in this particular track is how they go about making moments with each of the different sections here. And I think it's really a very intentional way that they've reserved certain parts of the instrumentation for certain sections and taken it out in certain places to really allow for each different section to feel like it's, or I guess the transition from section to section to feel like it's a moment being created. And that will fit really well with, a particular emotional relief that needs to happen for a scene.
Yeah, huge point there. I mean, it's cliche, but in this vibe where, the cinematic feel, and for a montage scene, so many visuals could be playing on screen, like you said, and it's, what is cohesive is his lyrics, the harmonies, and then those drum pads. It's almost like trailerized. It's, if we played it further, looking for that big build, but that tension, and then his harmonies, it's just so it's so impactful.
Oh yeah, and especially like in those moments where they kind of like builds and then everything drops out and then everything comes back in again. It just, it gives that emotional punch that you're looking for. You want your songs to be emotive in that way. You want your songs to be emotive, not descriptive.
Yes. And that's, I think that's going to be the common thread, because some of the tracks we pulled up, we're going to do, look at things from that POV. And the next track is a track called No Vacation by Livingmore. All right, cool. So the inside scoop, which is, we just penned this deal not too long ago, but this record, so shout out to Alex and Spencer of the band. They just actually did a residency with SoCal Radio for a month. They were guest DJing. And this record was produced by the former guitarist in the Smashing Pumpkins, Jeff Schroeder. So 2 degrees of separation back to the Smashing Pumpkins, but no vacation. As we were re-listening to the track, I was hearing elements of Brandy Carlisle, the Go-Go's, and the name of the track would come back to me. But for advertising, that hook, and what were you hearing there as far as the storytelling goes, Chase? I think you're mute your mic.
There we are. My bad.
Yeah. No worries.
I'm going to be honest, on my end, it was a little hard to hear the nuances of the lyrics. But vibe-wise, I think it sounded like everything was really building together cohesively. You know what I mean? And I really got very much like early 2000s, almost like 80s inspired early 2000s kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Like almost like a Kids in America, Kim Wilde kind of vibe.
That's what exactly. It's uncanny, that Kids in America track. Yeah.
And that's definitely like for a lot of productions right now, if you're talking about a 20-something-year-old character, right, in 2023, 2024, if they're thinking back to their years in high school, or their years as a child, they're going to be thinking back to late 90s, early 2000s. So great vibe to be going after for sure.
Yeah. The melodies, how that track started, and the hook for advertising as well. You know, something we talked about. We had music supervisor who does ads last season, but, you know, always looking at ads in, you know, a 30-second commercial. So you're trying to solve a problem with the energy, the pacing, and the vocal hook. And just to reiterate this, because I saw, and it was shout out to Suze Dolan, who's talking about with like Walmart, 1 + 1 is 2. So I just saw an ad the other day, and it was like, you know, the addition of something, whether it's buy one, get one free, or 1 + 1, get one, and then it's a discount. So lo and behold, so addition, math, and numeration of quantities for when it's back to school, back to President's Day advert. And then Movia is a Chase Walker Band track. Chase, to set this up, this is your most recent single, and it came out, if I'm correct, about a couple months back, and we'll play it. And you want to set it up?
Yeah. So we put this out January 26th, which was the Friday during the NAMM show here in Anaheim, California. And yeah, my inspiration on this was really to go for kind of a Ramones meets Led Zeppelin kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Something Led Zeppelin in color, but then in the attitude of it has very much of a American punk scene kind of grit to it.
Very cool. And we'll post up, and I know you also did, and we'll talk about it on the other side, but you did a short video, and we post the link. But yeah, we'll play the cut and talk about it on the other side. So Movia by the Chase Walker Band.
Rocking your roll, baby. The rhythm in your soul, baby. Make you shake it like you can't stand still. Keep it knocking until you get your fill. Gonna move you. your sweet baby. I'll be the liquor in your tea, baby. Gonna roll you in and right on your bones. So guilty pleasure make you lose control. I'm gonna move you.
I'm just gonna give that a little teaser so folks can check the full mix of that. Shout out to remind me on drums if you want to shout out your band members, because wicked track there.
Yeah, well, actually, these recent tracks I've been doing is just kind of all been myself in the studio, banging away at it. You know what I mean, to the best of my abilities. Yeah, just building it track by track, trying to as much as I can maintain that live band vibe and feel. You know what I mean? Because I have, on my previous releases from back when I was in high school, those were all like in a legit like full band studio setting, tracking it all live, and so I'm very well acquainted with how that's supposed to sound, and so I'm trying to capture that in what I've been doing.
Nice, man. And so do you have a full drum kit there at the pad at the studio?
So actually, I don't really play drums, but I'm kind of like someone who knows how to hear Spanish and read Spanish, but can't speak any Spanish. You know what I mean? As far as drums are concerned. So I use mostly MIDI software, but I have a lot of tips and tricks that I use as far as making it not feel like it's an electronic drum kit.
Yeah. No, man, because that's, shout out to, like Darren Gray, who's a drummer who's in our Patreon crew. But, that's some sick stuff there. Because I was like, who's on drums?
It's all of the top session drummers in the world is probably what it is. Recorded in the best studios to be found.
Yeah, no, man, not to but that's a credit to your craft of, because something we talked about in past podcasts is authenticity. So if you're putting out a track, the supervisor will be like, man, who's and that's, you nail it with that vintage sound, and then you're on vocals, obviously you're on guitars there, and that's all you live. And so to set it up, and then we can wrap on this episode. But so you got another single coming out that's also going to be in this sort of lane, the retro.
Yeah, well, I have I've been debating actually over the last few days as to whether or not to do another single or just go ahead and release this full EP of 6 songs that I've been waiting on. We've released 3 of them so far as singles, and so we have 3 new ones that we're sitting on. And yeah, it's basically going to be a bit of a mixtape of different classic American music styles, ranging from blues to blues influenced, British invasion inspired rock and roll, to R&B and soul, to more modern blues rock.
Very nice, very nice. And to thread the needle, as far as, and you've been following that formula of, as far as your intention goes, when you write your songs, do you, with respect to sync, or you're just crafting tracks that you want to feel that are authentic and representative of your brand, and then whether they happen to sync up to picture, is a bonus. Is that a fair assessment as far as your strategies?
So I try to take a bit of a hybrid approach, because I do think that to come up with the good ideas, you have to be writing a song for the sake of the song and not for the sake of the audience, whether that audience is on TikTok and Instagram, or whether that audience is a boardroom of supervisors, or just your sync agent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You have to write the song for the sake of the song. So you need to go into it with the mindset of, whatever the idea is, I need to fulfill the idea for that idea, and not try to mold it into something else to try to make it do all the things, right? Because you can write, if your song is accomplishing one thing really well but not another, you can write another song to do that other thing, right? The one song doesn't have to achieve everything. But at the same time, while I'm crafting my ideas, I'm focusing on the strategies and methods that tend to fit within a syncability range, right? And so what that might come down to is making sure that my choruses aren't overly wordy. Even though that I'm trying to write an idea that's not overly wordy, I can still come up with cool ideas, if that makes sense. So basically, when I approach a song, I'm approaching it for the song, but I'm filtering my ideas through the lens of, how would I apply this in sync? How would this work that way?
Yeah, that's a great, and it shows you've really, over the years working together, is peeling those layers back of, because it can be said is sometimes if folks are like, well, I'm going to write, maybe at this time of my life, everything's dark and gloomy. So if the songs you write are completely on that spectrum of very dark, gloomy, almost sad melancholy, then that's going to limit those songs to a particular scene. And then what I always say on the flip side, then you got to have happy songs, the other shades of emotions, and realizing there's that other caveat is where it's sort of the intention. If you're going to say, hey, I just want to write happy songs, but making sure they're still on the one hand authentic, and that they're not sort of just prefabricated. And because supervisors and agents, we can spot out if something was just written without any soul to it.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that really comes down to, if you want to write a sad song, let's say, you have to really get specific about what kind of sad song that is and really narrow in on that. That doesn't mean you have to get very descriptive about it, but make sure that what you're paying off is not just, all the things suck. You know what I mean? Like, get very specific about what kind of suck that is. What kind of sadness? Is it a lonely sadness, or is it a sadness of failure, or is it a sadness of loss, or is it a sadness of maybe it's a sadness of seeing someone you don't want to see again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
sure.
Try to make it not just a generic, sad song. Try to make it a sad song that really speaks something of its own, but in a way that's not so specific to a story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
As long as you're not making it a story, then it can work in a variety of scenes. Because ultimately, they're not using the whole song.
Correct.
If you have a chorus that really evokes, there are countless songs that are written about one thing and then get placed in the context of another. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And I'm just pulling up, and I always refer to our friends, at 1% Sound, the label. And so Frisco Lopez, who is going to be a future guest, and we had him on our listening sessions for the Sync Like a Pro Academy, which is coming back next month, and we'll post details below. But he had discovered and found and signed Kevin Smiley, who did a track called Paralyzed, and it went viral on TikTok. And I'm looking up his quote. He said, "My first song is a reminder that you're not alone." And Paralyzed talked about depression, mental health. And so Frisco signed Kevin from just hearing that track. And Frisco's quote that is embedded in my brain from our listening session is his advice for independent artists is, all it takes is one huge song to get to be found by an A&R, a label rep. And Paralyzed was almost like the Tracy Chapman of today. And Kevin got signed. He's about to secure a publishing deal, but he did a collab with Timbaland. But that goes to what your point, Chase, of what kind of sadness. He was talking about mental health, and it resonated with Gen Z and that melancholy, and especially, all the tales of when we went through the lockdown, COVID, and not to mention now, with all the wars, everything that's been happening around in the world, folks will turn to music for that comfort, for that solace, and making that day a little bit brighter when you feel the chips are down. But so yeah, great session today. The time flies by, Chase. So we will continue the chat on the next episode and play some more cuts. But subscribe, like, and we'll post down below our Sync Like a Pro Academy. We still have a wait list where 10 weeks taught live. Chase and I are breaking it down with music supervisors in listening sessions, so you get one-on-one feedback from industry experts on the sync lane. So with that, we'll catch you on the other side. Namaste.
Go.